Hello everyone! In this video, we'll explore Rhino 8's new features and show you tools to improve your design workflow. We begin by looking at the new command called ShrinkWrap. It wraps your model into a clean, watertight mesh, perfect for messy scans or open surfaces, and prepares your design for 3D printing. Next, we look at the improved QuadRemesh. This command in Rhino 8 turns different geometries into smooth, quad-dominated meshes, helping you refine and reverse engineer your models. Also, SubD's got a significant upgrade. With soft creases, you can add subtle edges without the harsh contrast of fully sharp or smooth surfaces, making your models more realistic. Next is a command taken from SketchUp called push-pull. It lets you drag surfaces to reshape them, use extrude for one surface or extend to adjust adjacent ones. 3D modeling in SketchUp is smooth and efficient this way, and it's awesome that a similar command made its way to Rhino. The clipping and sectioning tools let you cut into your models. Use a clipping plane for quick temporary views or clipping sections for detailed editable cuts for your drawings. Rendering gets a boost too. You see materials and lighting changes instantly with an upgraded cycle rendering engine and an improved, simpler user interface. Plus, you can choose from external engines like Octane, Enscape, V-Ray and much more. The floating UV mapping editor and procedural textures give you high-resolution previews that stay sharp at any zoom level, making texturing faster and keeping files light. Lastly, the monochrome display mode shows your design with clear white outlines, giving it a sketch-like look that highlights your intent. Now I can't wait to go over these new features with you. Let's dive in and explore them together. Let's take a look at some new features from the new Rhino 8. And first up, we'll take a look at a new command called ShrinkWrap. And this is the video that Rhino put on its website showing you its capabilities. So imagine you have a messy 3D scan or a set of open and closed surfaces, meshes, SubDs or whatever, and you need them to become a clean solid object. And that's where ShrinkWrap in Rhino 8 comes in. Think of it as putting a snug skin over your model, like shrink wrapping leftover foods after working an all-nighter on a deadline, for instance. It's a tool that wraps around your geometry, whether it's an open mesh, a NURB surface, a SubD, or even a point cloud, to create a watertight, closed mesh. So if your design has gaps or broken parts, ShrinkWrap fills in those holes so the object is ready for applications like 3D printing or further digital processing. This makes it perfect for when you need a solid mesh for things like a fragmented 3D scan data or when you're combining multiple objects into a unified form. So in short, ShrinkWrap is a powerful yet intuitive feature that helps you clean up and prepare complex geometries for practical uses like printing or reverse engineering. It's especially handy for fixing broken or hard to repair models, making it an essential tool for both beginners and seasoned professionals in computational design. I've set up a practice example for us to start exploring this feature. So I've set up 3 objects right now in my Rhino model, and you can download that model, which is available in the assets. So the first one is just a silly car that I modeled real quick. So it consists of poly surfaces or B-wraps that I just quickly put together and a mesh of a person sitting behind the wheel. These are all loose objects. They're not joined together in one volume. So if you want to, say, 3D print this object, so you have to prepare it to an STL file, it's going to take a lot of work because you first have to join the B-wraps together, turn it into a mesh, so you can join it with the person that's sitting here. But with the ShrinkWrap function, as we'll see, it's 2 clicks and done. Let's take a look at that function. So the function is called ShrinkWrap. So if you type ShrinkWrap in your command prompt, it asks you, hey, what object do you want to shrink wrap? So we're just going to select all our objects and then hit enter. And then a pop-up window will open with some options. And here we're going to take a look at what they do. So if you want to see the result already, I advise you to just hit preview. So you see the shrink wrap already being created, and also hide input objects. So you just see the output. So in here, we already see that our car got nicely wrapped around, let's say. And this is a solid mesh, a perfect mesh with no like weird things going on, like non-manifold edges or holes or intersecting faces, things like that. So let's take a look at those some functions, because you see it closed off the person that was inside. And that is this function here, fill holes. So if we deselect this function, it will not fill up those holes. And you see that, everything got nicely created. The only thing is that the resolution is a bit low. So you might want to increase another option, which is the target edge length. So these are the units you use in your model. So be careful with that. So I'm going to send it to, let's say 2. So for 2 centimeter. And you see that we got a better resolution right now. Another one you might want to use is polygon optimization. Right now it's set to 10%, which means that it will try to simplify the mesh that is being generated right now, which you can see mainly at the flat parts. But if you set it to 0, it won't optimize at all, and you get a really nice, like highly detailed mesh. The only thing is that, of course, it will be more heavy on your laptop or your PC. So take that into account. If you like the result, you can even set this one even lower if you say, well, I want even more resolution. And here you have the result basically. But let's set it to 0.2. I think that's fine. And if you hit OK, you move it a little bit to the left, you see that our mesh got nicely created. And this is a solid object. You can create an STL from this, send it to 3D print, and it will work perfectly. Here's another example that I've set up. It's just a simple plane, but it's the same idea. So we have different types of geometry here. We have a sub D and some B-wraps basically that intersect. Now, in this case, it's kind of easy to combine this into a solid object, but it works the same. It's just to show you that you can use it with any type of geometry altogether, either all one single type or different types of geometries. So just select it and hit ShrinkWrap again. So preview and hide input objects. And here we have the result. So you can set this one also a little bit lower, say to 0.2. And maybe here you want to use a little bit of an offset, because as you see, the propellers are not very well done. So let's see if that works. 0.1. So this will basically offset the initial geometry just by a little bit. Because my model is set to meters, it's 0.1, so 10 centimeters, or maybe just 1 centimeter. And here we get like a nice result. So just hit OK. And our ShrinkWrap got created. And the last one that I wanted to show you is a point cloud, because it's specifically helpful if you have scan data from a building, from an object, and that you somehow want to translate into a solid object for further processing or for 3D printing, things like that, or for further exploration. Just select it, all the points, and again, a ShrinkWrap. In this case, we have to select inflate vertices, because if not, it will not run. Because in this case, because they're points, you want to inflate those vertices so they become a solid object. So in this case, also, let's lower a little bit the target edge length. And polygon optimization, I'm going to set it to 0. And here we have the result. And if you're satisfied, you can hit OK. And here you have your ShrinkWrap part from your point cloud. You can basically throw anything at it, and ShrinkWrap will, with a couple of clicks, create a nicely snugged 3D mesh, wrapping it around and ready for 3D printing. All right, so next up, let's take a look into a function called QuadRemesh. Now, technically, this command existed since Rhino 7, but it has been greatly improved in Rhino 8. The QuadRemesh command is a powerful tool that quickly transforms any input geometry, whether it's surfaces, polysurfaces, meshes, or sub-Ds, into a clean quad-dominant mesh with optimized topology. One of the best things about QuadRemesh is that it can quickly turn the quad mesh into a sub-D surface. Now, this is really handy for reverse engineering. A messy scan becomes a smooth, edible surface with a clean structure, while keeping key details like creases and corners intact, like you can see here in the video that Rhino put on its website. So I've set up a quick file for you guys, like a Rhino file with a person's head that has a kind of a messy topology, like it's all triangulated, it doesn't have any direction, to see the power of the QuadRemesh tool. So this file is also included in the asset. So let's start. And the command is called QuadRemesh. So if you type in QuadRemesh in the command prompt, again, it asks you, hey, which objects do you want to remesh? So you select our mesh, our head. And again, like with the ShrinkWrap, a menu will pop up with some options that you can use. Let's start with, again, like with the ShrinkWrap, so we can see what is happening. So turn on preview and directly also hide input objects, so we know what's going to happen. And also let me turn off this layer 1 for now. And here you can already see that compared with the triangulated head, here you see we have a nice clean quad topology. But as you can see, we can still optimize it because it's not symmetrical, as you can see, which you would like to have because this object is symmetrical. And there's some other funny stuff going on that we can also optimize as well. So the first thing that you want to do is either choose between target edge length, which is the same as the ShrinkWrap option, where you can specify the ideal length of your mesh edges. Or you can choose, hey, how many quads do you want more or less? So right now it's set to 2000, but let's say if you increase it to 4000, for instance, double, it will recalculate and you see that we're adding more detail to our output. And the same adaptive size, if you want the quads to be smaller when there's more curvature, more detail going on, or lower. So if you set this thing to, for instance, 90, you see specifically where the ears are, that the quads will turn smaller to kind of approximate the shape. One thing that we can do is look at symmetry axis, because not all objects have this, but in our case, we do. This object is symmetrical, and it's symmetrical along the y-axis. That's why I position it like this. So if we turn on this option here, symmetrical along y, you see that right now we nicely get a symmetrical object where one half has the same topology as the other half. And another thing that you can do, we can kind of guide our output topology, right? Because I kind of want to accentuate the shapes in the face, like the mouth, where the mouth is, the nose, the eyes, the eyebrows. So for that, I have drawn some guide curves, which are in layer 1. And if I go to wireframe and I select these objects, they're here. So I've drawn them flat and then I projected it on top of the mesh. So I want to use this curve to guide my topology. So I right click on layer 1 and select objects. So we have selected all the curves. And then under guide curves, choose select curves. We have to select them again because select guide curves. So again, right click on layer 1 and select objects and then enter. And now if you go back to a shaded viewport to see what happened, you see that our topology changed. Like it added some n-gons and kind of changed the topology according to those guide curves. And you can choose curve influence, either edge rings, edge loops, or approximate. Now, it really depends on your object what gives the best results. In our case, it is actually approximate. So it will kind of choose if it will use edge loops or edge rings to kind of get the best result. Here you can see that we get like a really nice topology out of it using these guide curves. And what you can also do, right now we have face count of 6,000. So you might want to increase this a little bit more, let's say to 8,000 to get a little bit more detail. Let's see if it runs. Oh, it didn't run. Let's say 7,000. And here you see the result. So if you're happy with your result, just hit OK. And the new, let's say, quad remeshed shape is being generated. And here you can see that we have a really nice clean topology. It's not exactly as the one on the left, but here we can start adjusting it a bit better, right? We have these face loops, so we can select the face and, have this whole ring, and it's completely closed. It has a nice topology. And you can turn this thing into a sub D if you want to. So it's smooth, it has a good topology, etc. Let's take a look at the new features for sub Ds. Now, in previous versions, you had to choose between completely smooth edges or sharp creases, and there was nothing in between. Now, Rhino 8 introduced a middle ground, the soft crease. This allows you to create edges that are sharper than smooth ones, but not as harsh as full creases. Perfect for adding subtle details like gentle ridges or fillets without complicating your model. And I think it will be cool to look at this building from MVRDV. It's called the Imprint Entertainment Center in Seoul, South Korea. And as you can see here, the entrance has this appearance of a curtain being pulled up. So you get these ridges, these waves. And I think sub Ds, and especially this new feature that Rhino has introduced, is perfect to show. So let's go to Rhino. And let me go to my front view and let's start drawing a sub D. So let's go to our sub D toolbar. And here on the left, it's this button here, create sub D plane. And make sure you have your grid snap turned on. And let's draw a plane more or less this size. And also make sure, let me start over. Make sure that you have set your X count and Y count to 10. So we have a little bit more resolution. And let's draw it more or less 10 by 30. Now, the first thing I want to show you is the option that you already are familiar with, which is the hard crease. And that's this button here. Before you just had the option to add a hard crease, but now Rhino has introduced left mouse to add a soft crease to it as well. So let's start with the corners, because for that, I just want to add a hard crease. Just use the previous method because I don't want the corners right now to be rounded. So let's select our sub D, hit F10 to turn on control points. And if you hover over this button, just hit right click. And let's select our 4 corner points and hit enter. Now you see that these corners right now have a perfect hard crease. So this is my base surface that I want to kind of model. So first I'm going to draw a quick help curve. It's going to help me a little bit to get the shape right. So I want to go more or less, let's say from here to, let's say here, something like this, or maybe let's do it to here. It's not to scale. It's just to have the example of the entertainment center. So let's select our sub D. Oh, let's lock this thing so we don't accidentally select it. And let's select our sub D, turn on our control points. And the way to quickly get those waves is to select a row or a column of control points. And let's reposition our gumball. So let's click the handle and relocate gumball. Make sure you have your grid snap turned off, because I don't want to accidentally snap not to the point but to the grid. So I want to avoid that. Make sure you have your end point and vertex O snaps turned on. And then here you see it will snap to this top point. And just hit enter again. And you see that our gumball got repositioned. And now, just by dragging this blue handle here, we can kind of start getting our sub D into position. So more or less until, let's see, until here. And let's go to the next row as well. So this one, same procedure. Just drag it until here, like this. And the last one, this one just a little bit till here. Yeah, let's leave it at this. So something like this, right? We can go to our perspective view. Let's go also to shaded view, just like this. So, and let's now create that wavy effect for the entrance. So let me unlock that curve because we don't need it anymore. You can either hold your Ctrl and Shift to subselect either faces, edges, or vertices. Or you could go to selection filters and select, well, first of all, enable them. So, and then select sub-objects. And right now you can select all of them. I prefer to use my Ctrl Shift, so I'm gonna disable those. And so let's select our first row that we wanna move. So I'm gonna start from here. I think I still have my selection filter. Because I have sub-objects turned on. Yeah, you could also just turn on sub-objects to just select those things. So if you have this option turned off, you have to hold your Ctrl Shift, and if not, you can just select it and it will select. With your Shift, you can select more. And let's select the second row as well. Okay, this is kind of sometimes a bit annoying. Let me go better to wireframe. And that from here as well. And let's select one more here. So let's move these guys inwards with, let's say, 1 unit, 2 units, 1.5. I know, because the other ones are going to move out. Now let me do it a little bit less. Let me use just one. So now let's select the second row. You see that is this guy. And let's move these guys the other direction. So let's use -1. Just like this. So let's go to shaded view. So this is right now my facade. But let's say I want to get a bit more definition here, because right now it bulges, but let's say I want to give more definition to this edge. Let's say I want to give it more sharpness, right? So before, I would select this edge and go to my sub-Ds and just select a hard crease. So there will be a right click, and you see that my edge, has a sharp edge. The issue with that is that if you check for surface continuity, so let me select the sub-D, analyze, and then surface and zebra. You see that here we have a problem, like it doesn't flow very well. It's not a continuous surface. It's not smooth, let's say, maybe environmental map. Like here you can see it maybe even better. So here you see that the transition between the soft crease kind of and the exact hard edge, it's not very continuous. So you can do that a little bit better using that new feature. So let's select that whole edge again. So from here all the way into here. And right now, instead of right clicking on this option, let's left click. So right now we have the soft crease function enabled, and you can select the vertices and then apply a weight between 0 and 100, telling it how much crease you want. So if you click, for instance, this vertex here, it says here like, hey, what's the weight you want? 0 is smooth, 100 is the heaviest. So let's do 100. And let's select this one as well. And let's also select 100. And the nice thing is that it automatically goes, because 0 is the default, which is completely smooth. And then it kind of automatically calculates for all the other vertices how much percentage you want. So if I select this one, for instance, it automatically says like, hey, 75. Like this point, this is 75, 50, 25, which is perfectly in between, right? So let's say you want like this, from 0 to 100 and then back to 0. You see that we get like a nice no crease at all, and then this edge slowly creases up to 100. But it's not completely sharp. It's always like a little bit still with a soft crease. And this is to ensure the surface continuity, because if I now go to Analyze, Surface, and Environment Map, you see that there's no discontinuous things going on the surface. And this way, I can really be detailed about if I have an edge that I want to accentuate in a certain way. I don't have to add edge loops, because that's how it was done before. If you add edge loops, you automatically create more like detail in that point. So you automatically create like more creases, more softness. But this way you don't have to add extra topology, extra geometry, creating extra faces to kind of achieve the same result. So that's really nice. And I can do the same for the top. Let's do it for the interior one as well. So it's from here to here. And just hit left click. And then select this vertex and set it to 100. And same for this one. And that's how you can create a lot of definition, a lot of detail without adding more geometry. Because if I want to transform this even into a NURB surface, this will just be one surface. If I go to convert to NURBS surface, and let me see subdue object options, because I just want to see show packed faces, yes, and then force update, and then enter. Even though it has a lot of control points and everything, it is one surface. So you could use this to send to manufacturer, and it's really accurate. It's mathematically described. There's no meshes or anything. It's a very interesting feature. Let's take a look into some improved modeling features that Rhino 8 offers. And the main new command that I want to focus on is Rhino's 8 new push and pull command. Now, this command is very similar to SketchUp's command, which has a similar name, and it lets you reshape surfaces by simply dragging them. This streamlines modeling tasks and offers a more direct, intuitive approach. It's faster than older editing methods and helps you experiment a bit more freely. This addition narrows the gap between creative sketching and precise CAD work, making Rhino friendlier to both beginners and experienced users. So let's take a look into that command. And I'm just going to draw a simple cube in Rhino to demonstrate its capabilities. So let me just draw a 10 by 10 cube, just like that. And I'm going to chamfer the edges. So let me go to Solid Tools and this command here, chamfer edges. Just draw a selection window over all the edges. And the default 1 unit, that's fine. Just hit enter. And you see that my edges got chamfered. Now let's take a look into that new command. So that command is located under a couple of places. It's under Solid Tools. And it's this command here. It's this button of 2 people kind of seesawing push-pull. It's also located under the standard toolbar, and then all the way in the bottom, it's located here. And it's also located under new in version 8, which is located here. So I find this command so helpful that I actually created an alias for it so I can access it quickly under my P key. If you want to do that too, let me show you how to do that. So if you go to Tools and then Options, and if you go to Rhino Options under Aliases, there's a list of aliases for you. And I changed, because I think the P command by default has another command under it. I rewrote it, so I deleted the old command and I put the push-pull command right here. So it's important to put an apostrophe in the beginning, which cancels the previous command, if I'm not mistaken, and then an underscore, so it's the English language, so it doesn't matter in which language you have installed Rhino, it will always, run the command, and then just the command's name, which is push-pull. And if you've done that, just hit OK. So right now, if I hit my P key, it will open that command, so I don't have to click the button, let's say. Let's see what this command does. So let me hit P, enter to initiate the command. So right now it asks us like, hey, what surface do you wanna, push pull on? So let's select this surface here. And now there's a couple of options that you can pick. You can set a direction, set a base point. By default, it is the normal of the surface. So this way, let me turn off my grid snap. You can kind of extend these surfaces, right? So P, enter, let me select this one again. And this way you can start pulling your surfaces. And the cool thing is that even if I do something like this, where I intersect my old surface, it will automatically do some Boolean operations so it still is a solid object, right? So that's really cool. Now, let me select, for instance, this corner one, because now if you look again into the command prompt, there's an option here that says mode. And here you can choose between extrude and extend. Now, when you select extrude, the command extrudes the chosen surface without altering the adjacent surfaces. Now, this means the surrounding geometry remains unchanged, and only the selected surface is extended in the specified direction. This mode is particularly useful when you want to add or remove volume from a model without affecting its neighboring surfaces. And this was the option that was selected when we start extruding the other edge. The other mode that I want to show you now is the extend, which is this one. Now, in extend mode, the push-pull command not only extrudes the selected surface, but also adjusts the adjacent planar surfaces to accommodate this change. This results in the surrounding surfaces being extended or shortened to seamlessly integrate with the modified surface. This mode is beneficial when you aim to modify a surface while maintaining continuity with its neighboring planar surfaces, right? That's the result I'm getting here, let's say. So it kind of knows how the adjacent surfaces, how they behave, and it tries to accommodate them as well. Right now I can do like this, for instance. But if I hit the command again, and instead of selecting extend, I select extrude, you see that it just extrudes the surface. And if I do like this, for instance, it creates a hole in my masking, right? I invite you to play around a little bit with this command. If you have set it under the alias, just hit P, enter, and you can use that command, or click the button here and it will do the same thing to initiate the command, right? The only thing is that, for instance, here, if I set my mode to extend and I extend it, for instance, here to a point, let me turn off my snaps. And again, so my triangle, if I make it into a point, I can't go back. So right now I can't select, for instance, this point and use the push-pull command again. That's the only thing. Like the moment you kind of extend it in a way that it becomes a point, there's no going back. Now let's say how this can benefit us in the architectural world. So let's say you have a masking. Let me just draw a quick masking for you guys. I'm just purely focusing on the masking right now, on the shapes, not necessarily on the precise measurements. Let's say a shape for, I don't know, for a house or something like that. And let's say I want to give this shape, this masking, a bit more definition. Now, using that push-pull, we can do that really quickly. And that also comes together with another command, which is called inset. And I think that command is also new in version 8. The command's name is called inset. So if you type in inset in the command prompt, let me turn on my help so I know where it's located so I can show you guys. So inset. It's under sub-Ds even. It's not necessarily only for sub-Ds. You can also use it for polysurfaces. So, and that's what we're going to do right now. So let's say I want to give this face an offset. I would just select this face, hit enter, and you see that I get my inset created. And this is just a curve that's being placed on top of the surface, right? So right now the default is set to 1. I think for now that's fine. Just hit enter. And the cool thing is that I can use my push-pull command again to kind of manipulate this thing. So I can select now just this inside surface.
and let's say set it back a little bit, just like this, right? And I can do the same, for instance, here. So inset, just like this. I have to set it to extrude, excuse me. And if I do this, like a hole will be created in my geometry, right? And for instance, here, I can do inset again. Let's use 0.5. I can set it back a little bit. I can even like select this one, drag it down to create like a, like a door, like an opening, for instance. And that's, how you can really quickly manipulate your surfaces and create some cool stuff. Another thing that I wanted to show you is that if you just draw a curve on a surface, the push-pull will also work. So if I move this one back to here, and let's say I want to cut off this corner a little bit, there's another command which also is new in Rhino 8. Lets me control the C-plane on which I am drawing really quickly in real time. So it's this one. And if you left click, it will toggle the auto align. So now if I select a surface, holding my Ctrl Shift to subselect, you see that my construction plane right now got aligned exactly to that surface. And if I deselect it, it will return to its original. So that's really nice. And this way I can draw like stuff on surfaces really quick. Let's say if I want to draw a shape on top of this roof. Let me turn off my grid snap. I could do it like this. And if I'm done, just click it. And you see that my pentagon got nicely orientated on top of that surface. And again, if I use my push-pull command, it will recognize this curve and it will just select the surface on the inside. So that's really nice. Again, it's a solid shape. If I would like to draw a chimney or something like that. So if I would like to cut off, let's say this corner, I could draw, let me orientate my C-plane, a curve, and let's say from here to here. Or why not? Let's use the same inclination as this guy. You can also do that. Or just draw a curve here. Then I'm just going to extend it, just like this. And I know if you guys already knew, but the gimbal also has some improved tools. So if you want to, let's say, snap to this corner here while dragging along the y-axis, if you go to the options from the gimbal and set the option of snappy dragging or smooth dragging, I think its default is smooth, but we want to set it to snappy. And now if you click on the handle to move it along the y-axis and you hover with your mouse, so you hold your mouse, your left mouse, and you go to a corner point here, you see it snapped nicely here while maintaining its direction along the y-axis. So like this. And now if I use my push-pull command again, P, I can now just select this triangle here and just, drag it all the way out and it got removed, right? So now again with inset, I can create the inset again, just like this. So yeah, I'd like you to experiment a little bit with these commands, the inset command, and the push-pull command. And also if you'd like the new options from the gumball and also with the auto plane. And if you want to turn it off, just left click it again because you're toggling if it aligns or not. So click it again. And now if I select an option, it doesn't auto align. But this way with these new tools, the inset, the push-pull and the auto align C-planes, like you're way more freely to quickly sketch while still maintaining accuracy and everything. basically how SketchUp operates, where you can really quickly set up a massing, etc. And that's the same right now in Rhino. If you model in solid objects, these new commands let you really quickly explore different options while maintaining like a clean massing without having to draw a lot of help curves or things like that. In this part, we're going to take a look into a new command called the clipping section, which is also new in Rhino 8. And the clipping section is basically a clipping plane. It's the same Rhino object, but the clipping section has some extra features and attributes we can play around with. So I've set up a model for you guys, the Barcelona Pavilion, to follow along to explain this new feature. And it's the same model we've been using in some other modules, as you can remember. So let's first take a look into a regular clipping plane, because the regular clipping plane also has some extra attributes and features that we can use in Rhino 8. So let's insert a clipping plane, just a regular clipping plane for now. And I'm going to activate my clipping plane layer, so we directly have them already in a designated layer. So if we go to our command prompt and we type in clipping, you see that the autocomplete already puts the clipping plane command, and that's the one we're going to use right now. And below it, you see clipping sections, and that is the new command that we're going to take a look at in a little while. So let's insert a regular clipping plane for now. And let's go to our front view. And let's draw it more or less something like this. And as you've been used to, the clipping plane just hides parts of the model, so you can explore a little bit how the model works, basically creating a section. And if I expand my sidebar a little bit, so we increase a little bit the layers window, the first thing I want to take a look at is the section style, which is also new in Rhino 8. And that is if you want to apply a different section style to it. So in my layer 3D, that's where all my 3D objects from my model are located. And right now, the section, as you can see, it's just solid. It doesn't have any things applied to it. But let's say I want to apply a certain hatch to that section. We can do that based on layers first. So let's take a look into my outline, which is the base of my model. Let's say I want to create a different section style for that where it's being cut. Now I can do that by clicking on section style. And here a window pops open with some different options. So right now it's set to none. But let's say I want to set my pattern to a hatch, which I can also do. So let's say I want to use the grid hatch, for instance. And let's also rotate it 45 degrees. Let's keep the pattern scale to 1. And then there's also the boundary option, which is the boundary of the outline. And I want to kind of make that boundary a little bit more thick. So instead of 3, I'm going to use 5. And color, I'm going to set it to black. And if you hit OK, you see that right now in my Rhino viewport, this pattern got applied, this new section style. And I can do this for any layer in my object. I can also do it by object. So let's say for walls, let's do the same thing. So I can click again on the walls layer, which are the blue objects in my model. Click on section style. And let's say this time I want to use another hatch. Let's say I want to use hatch 1. I'm going to rotate it maybe 45 degrees again. Set the scale a little bit smaller. Because we're cutting it, I want to accentuate the cut line. So I'm going to set it to 5. And the color, again, I'm going to set it to black. And you see that whenever I cut my wall, for instance on this side, the hatch is being applied and the thick outline of 5, right? But here it didn't got applied. This is because for this particular geometry, I set it instead of layer, you can also set it by object. So if you select your geometry that you want to use and you go to the properties, again, there's this new feature or attribute being displayed called section style. And this works the same So I can click on custom, and then again, the window will open. As you can see here, it's different than what I've applied. And because right now, instead of using by layer, I'm using it by object. So here I can set, for instance, instead of solid, I can set none. And then supposedly it will be by layer. And if I set it to layer, you see that the hedge here is being applied. But let me see if I can turn this thing to black, because right now, pattern color is set by object. So it's blue, so it's barely visible. But let's set it to black as well. So supposedly, yeah, the hedge right now is black. And I can do that for any layer or any object that I want. Let's say if I pull my clipping plane a little bit further, and I also want to give the roof some sort of hedge, I can go to my roof layer. Or let's say, well, this one, I'm going to do it by object. So select my object, go to properties, section style. Instead of setting it by layer, we set it custom. And let's use grid 60, which is this one. Black is fine. Pattern scale 0.5. And also 5 for the outline. You see that the hedge got nicely applied. So that's one of the new features of the clipping plane that allows you to create a bit more if you want to focus on construction drawings or things like that. This new feature helps us a lot. The next thing I want to take a look at is selective clipping, which is also very helpful, which allows me to, instead of clipping the whole model, I can selectively pick certain objects, certain geometries that I want clipped and certain that I don't want. So if we select our clipping plane and we go to its properties, there's some new options here available. So specifically I want to look at objects clipped. So here I can select either objects that I want to either include or exclude. Right now I selected include. So because I have nothing selected, right now my clipping plane doesn't clip anything. But I can, for instance, let's say I want to clip everything except the outline. So instead of include, I can set exclude. And I'm going to pick the outline, click objects, and then it asks you, hey, which objects do you want to exclude? So I'm going to select my outline, hit enter, and you see that everything is clipped right now except the outline. And this way you can create a section with a little bit more detail. So that's another feature that's very helpful. So let me turn that off. And next up, let's take a look at the new section, like the new command that basically creates a clipping plane on steroid. So I'm going to delete my old clipping plane. And let's insert that new section plane, right? So type in again clipping, but instead of selecting our clipping plane, I want to select my clipping section, right? So the first thing it asks you like, hey, which objects do you want to include in your section? And it asks you that because it's basically the same as what we saw before, that if you want to include or exclude certain objects from the clipping, you can only specify that. So right now I just want to clip everything or include everything for the section. So I'm just going to hit enter. And then it asks you like, hey, where do you want to place it, right? So already here in the options, you have way more options that you can use. So first of all, I want to flip it so it looks the other way. And for right now, we're going to set save to name views. We're going to set that to yes. Label mode, so it gives you a label. And custom depth. That's something that's also really cool. We're going to take a look into that a little while. And also the direction, if you either want to, because right now it's set to the X direction, but I can also set it to the Y, which it will flip it around like this. Or you can set a custom direction. But of course, later on, if you have placed it, you can, with the gumball, orientate it however you want. So let's say we're going to put it here. And my clipping plane right now, my clipping section is placed. And you see that it works exactly the same as a regular clipping plane, but it has these tags right now added to it. And let me make it a little bit bigger, just like that, like section 0. All right, let's go to its options. We can also use another option, which is called custom depth, which also works with a regular clipping plane. So if you turn on this checkbox, and then you can say, hey, how much depth do you want to clip? So right now it's set to 0. So it's just this slice, but I can set a range for 5, and then you see that I get a slice of my model that's being displayed right now. The last thing I want to show you for this, let me turn off the custom depth, is that the moment you placed a section plane or clipping section and you set the option set to name views to yes, the cool thing is that it automatically creates a view using this clipping plane. So if we go to our named views tab, you see that this right now got placed like section 0. And this is really nice because this view automatically updates if I update my section plane. And that's very helpful if you want to create construction drawings. So let's say you've set up page 1 with some construction drawings. Let's say you want to lay out it. So if we go to one of the details and double click on it, and right now it's set to front view. But let's say I want to set it to that new view that was automatically created called section 1 or section 00. It's this one, right? And the nice thing is that it's directly set already to this. And if I set my view to rendered, you get a really nice like rendered background with an accurate construction section with hatches and all these things applied that we set previously. And if I go back to my model and if I move the section plane, let's say I move it towards here, and I go back to my page 1, you see that it got updated automatically. It's just a very quick way to create construction drawings from your model, right? Now, the next thing I want to take a look at is, let's say you want to create some drawings, some clipping drawings from that section, because most of the time you want to get the slice, get these actual lines, the 2D lines where you cut your model, and you want to edit them or, so you get a vectorized output from it. Let's do that too. So let's select my section plane. And if you go to drafting and then sections, here are all the options available if it comes to section planes, how to create one, how to view one, and way more other options as well. And the one I take a look at is create drawings. So let's hit it. And again, if you look at the command prompt, there's a lot of options that you can use, and we're going to take a look at most of them. But mainly, it's the add background. You can set it to no or to yes, depending if you want to add the background, because what's going to happen is that looking at the section plane, it will basically create a make 2D from that view, right? And also the projection, if you want to have parallel or perspective. And if you want to add a silhouette, which basically outlines the whole section. So let's leave it at this. Let's leave it at background no for now, because we can always update it later. And just click somewhere in your model. And as you can see, nothing happened because it's being clipped out by my section plane. So let me turn that off. If I select my clipping plane, go to properties and turn it off in model space. And here's my section. And again, just like with the named views, it automatically updates. So if I move this thing towards here, you see that these curves, they got updated. It automatically also puts them in its designated layer. If you go all the way down, you see here that here's my drawing, my flat 2D drawing for my Make 2D. And it's also nicely ordered in layers. So I can, for instance, turn off solid. And then you see that the hatches that I applied previously, they're also being included in that thing as well. And everything is automatically updated. Now, if I go back again to the options, let's say I want to update that drawing. So I would go to drafting, sections, and edit drawing. And now again, I have my options appearing in the command prompt. And let's turn on the background. And here you see that all the curves that are lying in the background, they got added as well. And I can set, for instance, the projection to perspective. And here you see that instead of the parallel projection, right now I have the perspective view, which is pretty cool. And I can even change the perspective. If I set, for instance, a target point, I can set it somewhere else. Let's say I set it more or less here. You see that my perspective got updated. The vanishing point goes to that target point. So that's pretty cool. But I think in most cases, you want to use parallel projection if you want to create a construction drawing, like a section. And if you're satisfied, just hit OK. This is the line work, the vector line work that you can use. And the same thing, you can use these curves, like the drawing, you can use it here as well. If you don't want to use this method of the set named views, you could also use the actual drawing of the 2D line work, basically. And if you want to edit this line work, the moment you start editing it, of course, the connection is being broken, so it won't be updated anymore. But you can do that by just unlocking this layer, and you can start editing these individual properties. And if you want to delete it, just delete this layer, just like that. And the last thing I want to take a look at are sectioning. Let's say you want to section your model with the intent to laser cut or for further explanation of the different sections in your model. This is a very helpful method as well. Let me move this one a little bit to here, and let's copy it a couple of times over. So I'm going to use the array command. I want to array my section plane. In the X, I want 1. In the Y, let's use 5. And in the Z, also 1. And then the spacing, so let's use 2 units for now. Let's see how it turns out. It's a bit too close. So let me set the spacing to 3. Let's see what happens. Let's set it to 4. Yeah, I think this is fine. So right now we have a couple of sections, and if you're done, just hit enter. As you see right now, my Rhino viewport, the sections also got automatically renumbered. It knows, hey, you're adding more sections. It automatically renames it. So if you want to create slices of your model, it does that very well like this. So now if I go to my drafting and sections, and it's basically this one, extract sections. So if I click this one, it asks you hey, which clipping planes you want to extract these sections from. So I'm going to select all these guys, hit enter. And as you see here, the actual curves from the section, they got extracted. So that's very nice. This is very helpful if you want to, in 2D, explore something or use this for laser cutting, things like that. But let's say I want to nest them next to each other, to laying them out on a sheet for laser cutting or something. Maybe for this model, it's not very helpful, but let's say you want to create a waffle structure from a certain object. This method can be very helpful. So let's go again to drafting, sections, and nested drawings. So I'm going to select again my 5 clipping planes. Arrangement on the XY plane, spacing 1, that's fine. Width, we can also, depending on the sheet you want to put them in, let's set it to 40. Let's just put it outside like this. And you see that my sections, they got nicely laid out with the options that I put here, the spacing 1 and a box of 40. And also with the tag and everything included. And the last thing I want to show you is extract slices, which is also a very helpful feature. So let me just delete these ones because I can just use one to make it more clear. Just going to put it somewhere in the middle. So again, let's go to drafting, sections, and extract slices this time. And let me Ctrl C because let's do it again, but without selecting the clipping plane because I want to put some options. Drafting, sections, and extract slice. Here's the options. Use clipping plane depth, no, because I want to specify that manually. So thickness, that's the thickness of the slice you want to extract. So let's use 4 instead of 2. Group yes, location center, so it offsets to both sides. Let's select our clipping plane and hit enter. As you see, instead of a section right now, a slice got extracted. So if I move it to the side, you see that this is my slice that has the depth of 4 being extracted. So this is really cool if you want to create a diagram of your model. So that's a very helpful command as well. So as you've seen, the clipping plane has been updated a lot with some new features. I implore you to play around with it a little bit, play some sections and go to its options and, see what it does. Add some options here or some geometry here, objects clipped. Play around with the custom depth. See how it can benefit you in generating drawings. Also in page 1, how you can set up really quickly a layout page using that set name to views that are updated automatically. I think it can really help you to set up construction documents more efficiently, more quick. The last new features from Rhino 8 that I want to talk to you about have to do with presentation and rendering specifically. So the first thing is the updated Cycles render engine. Now, the Cycles render engine got a big upgrade. It works faster on modern hardware like Macs with Apple Metal and the latest NVIDIA or AMD video cards. So you can instantly see changes in your material, textures, and lighting. Think of it as having a super fast preview of your work. Now, in addition to these performance improvements, Rhino also updated its rendering user interface. The UI is cleaner, more compact, and easier to use. It helps you manage everything from materials and textures to lighting with simple controls like sliders. Plus, it works smoothly on both Windows and Mac, making your workflow a lot more enjoyable. Now, besides that, we know that Rhino comes with the Cycles engine built in as a default, but you can also now use other popular rendering tools if you prefer. Engines like Octane, Enscape, Maxwell V-Ray, and much more, as you can see here on Rhino's page. This means you're not stuck with one method. You get to choose the one that fits your style and needs the best. Now, let's take a look. Let's go to Rhino and let's take a look at some other new features that have to do with rendering and presentation. So another thing that Rhino has upgraded is the UV mapping. Rhino 8 comes with this new updated UV mapping editor specifically. This new floating UV editor lets you work independently of the main window, which is great if you're juggling multiple monitors or working on a big project. You can easily pin vertices, straighten edges, and align them with your curves to get your textures just right. Plus, your textures are displayed at a full resolution in real time, so you don't have to wait anymore for baking. It's a huge time saver and simplifies the whole texture process. So let's take a look at that new UV texture editor. So I'm using the same model as before, the Barcelona Pavilion. So let me just turn it off for a second and let me just draw a simple shape so we can take a look at that new UV texture. I'm just going to draw a regular curve, NURBS curve, and I'm just going to offset it a little bit. And let me see. Let's use 1. And let's set the cap off. Just a regular offset. And let's loft these two curves together so we get a surface. Just like this. And let's see if you want to UV texture or UV map this shape. So what you would do is you would select that shape, go to its properties, and then select this one, texture mapping. And to open the UV editor, you would hit this button here, UV editor. And right now, as you can see, this window, it used to be docked on the side, which had a little bit limited capabilities of editing everything, but now it's a standalone window, so it's a little bit more easy to edit and to see what's happening. And there's also some extra features here included that I want to take a look at. So the first thing is this one, which is really nice. It's just pack texture meshes, which will pack it on top of the texture. And right now we don't have a material nor a texture, but we can apply a UV grid like the default just to see how the UV mapping occurs. That's all the way in the bottom. So if you select use texture, it will use the default UV grid. So it's very helpful because then we can see right now what's happening, how the texture is applied. And let's say I want to unwrap it using these methods. And the default is always set to conformal. So we can select that one, and you see that it kind of right now uses the shape of that loft. And we can rotate it to see how the UV mapping is applied. But besides the conformal, we also have as rigid as possible. So, but usually conformal works pretty well. But let's say we want to align the UV texture, the UV mapping, that it follows along the shape of this curve. So it's not just, just projected flat on top, right? So we'd have to straighten the UV mapping of this shape. And that's the other tools that are included. And that's also located here. Is if you we need to pin some vertices to keep in place. And then we can use the one here on the side, add an edge straightening constraint to kind of straighten out this shape. So let's first put 2 vertices that we don't want to move. So let's say here and this one. These basically stay in place, and hit enter when you're done. And let's also use this one, an edge straightening constraint. So we will select, if you want to select the whole edge, you select the first one that you want to use, and then all the way in the end, this one. And then if you double click an edge in between, it will automatically select that whole edge. So that's very nice. And supposedly if we hit enter now, that texture shape is being straightened out. And as you see also here in my Rhino viewport, it nicely follows along. So I just have to orientate a little bit so it's straight, like this. You can even, I think, use this one again. It packs it automatically nicely, so we can move it here, for instance. And you see, it nicely right now follows along. And if you want to, because the bottom is not straight, there's another trick we can also use. Because it's a mesh, so if we hit F10 to turn on its vertices, we can select this bottom row and make sure you have your gimbal turned on and also your vertex snap and also point just in case. And if you zoom in, just click and drag on this handle until it snaps to point. And all the vertices right down the bottom are all nicely in the same plane as well. So this way, with these new capabilities, it's really quickly to edit your texture in the UV mapping editor. And you can even, if you want to be more professional and you want to edit your texture in Photoshop, you can even save this as a bitmap here, save to bitmap. And you can also change the transparency from the texture, let's say. So you can either make it really transparent or more, etc. Let's take a look at some other things that Rhino also has upgraded, and those are the procedural textures. Now in Rhino 8, procedural textures have been seriously upgraded. Instead of relying on fixed images, they're created using smart algorithms. This means that no matter how much you zoom in, your texture always stays sharp. There's not going to be any pixelation at all. So they update also in real time. Thanks to our GPU power, you'll see changes instantly. Plus, they keep file sizes small because instead of using bitmaps, they use algorithms, making your projects lighter and more efficient. And overall, it's a great way to get beautiful, scalable textures without any hassle. So let's take a look into that as well. So let me just draw a simple shape, a simple cube, just like this. And let's create a material for that. So let's go to our materials, plus for a new one. Let's select custom. And let's just change the name to material 1. And let's apply it to our cube. Right click, assign to objects. And here in the bottom, that's the one here. For instance, you can apply textures to a lot of different layers, like the color, the transparency, the bitmapping, mapping, etc. But for now, let's just use color because it kind of works the same for all of them. So click to add texture. And these are all the ones that I was talking about. Right now, they're all procedural textures, which means that they use algorithms instead of bitmaps. So we're always going to get a really sharp texture applied. So let's use one of those textures. And let's use the dots texture. And let's also go to our rendered view so we can see what is happening. Right now you see that my dots texture got applied. And if I zoom in, you see that it's really sharp, no matter how much I zoom in, right? It's vector-based or algorithmic-based. Let me see if I can get the dots a bit more bigger. Number of dots, let's use 5. Maybe 10. Pattern size, we can use it on the same. And the repeat, let's set repeat a little bit bigger. So let's say 10. So you see here right now how those dots are being generated. And of course I can change the color if I wanted to. And of course, if I don't like how the UV texturing is done, how those dots basically go to the other side, I can change that in my UV editor, right? So you would select the object, what you did before, and then go to its properties, go to textures, and then unwrap if you want to apply an unwrapping ourselves, because I think if you go to UV editor, this is the how automatically it lays out. Only these faces, so the bottom face, as we can see here, is loose, and the top face is loose. That's why here there's a break, and here it goes around the corner. But let's say I don't want to have a continuation at all. I just want to have 6 individual faces. We could go out of here and go again to properties and texture mapping and select unwrap this time. Mapping channel 1, that's fine. And now we can select the seams, basically where it will be cut up to be edited in the UV texture editor. I'm just going to select all the edges. So just a selection window and enter. And if we now open the UV editor, supposedly we're going to have 6 individual islands like here. So that's really great. And here I can now, individually, let's see if I pick, for instance, this one. I can individually align them however I want to, right? And if I, instead of use texture, just my default UV grid, I can use the material, our dots material. You see here how it's going to end up. So this whole workflow of applying texture, seeing how it looks like in render view, it's greatly improved right now in the new Rhino 8. Let me go to my layers tab and let me just delete this object. And the last thing I want to take a look at is a new display mode, which is also really cool. It's called the monochrome display mode. And this new display mode in Rhino 8 is all about simplicity and focus. Your 3D model is displayed in all white with the geometry's edges accentuated. This gives your design a sketch-like feel that brings out your design intent, making it great for creating diagrammatic renders from your project. So that display mode is located here. And then if you open the display submenu, it's located here, monochrome viewport. And this one is great. Like I said, if you want to create a diagram of your model just to show your design intent, how you got to that shape, this can really help you to achieve that really quickly. Like before, you'd had to do a white render or a toon render using a toon material if you're using V-Ray to accentuate the edges. Right now, Rhino does that automatically, and it even distinguishes between lines that are basically a silhouette that silhouettes an object or internal lines using a different gray.
Thank you so much for watching our review of Rhino 8's new features. Today, you saw how tools like ShrinkWrap, QuadRemesh and improved sub-D commands turn messy shapes into clean, solid models for 3D printing and other digital tweaks. The new push-pull command makes creative changes simple, and Rhino 8's upgraded rendering with the enhanced Cycle engine and UV editor lets you preview realistic materials, textures and lighting in real time. In today's fast-changing world, these design skills are in high demand at top architectural firms. Learning these techniques makes you more marketable and helps you make smarter decisions. This can lead to faster promotions and more innovative projects. Today, we only covered the new features of Rhino 8, however, a fraction of what this powerful software can do. If you are interested in learning more, check out our certification course at Think Parametric. We cover everything, from Rhino basics to advanced explicit modeling. Besides this, we also teach BIM, visualization, parametric modeling, graphic design and much more. It's not just about learning tools, it's about gaining the skills modern architecture and construction need. Visit Think Parametric today and take the next step in your design journey. We are committed to help you turn your creative ideas into professional success. See you there.